Hey, what up? It's Coreycha. In today's video, we're showing you how to motion track in After Effects and actually put objects, videos, text, graphics onto your videos and make it look like it was actually there in the video when you shot it. Now, a lot of people do motion tracking and they give you like these weird examples of, you know, how to motion track a green screen or like a video onto your phone through a green screen, or how to put text over in the sky on a building. Random things that you would never actually do in an actual edit, an actual video, right? The purpose of learning these skills when you're becoming a filmmaker, you know, through Premiere Pro, through the video editing softwares, After Effects, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, whatever it is, the whole goal is to build skill sets that you're actually going to be using in practical, purposeful ways, right? So in this video, rather than teaching you random things of how to do randomly, like how to, you know, Photoshop a screen onto your phone, or how to Photoshop text into the sky, which it's fun to do it, but you would never actually use it in a real video. I want to show you practical applications for motion tracking that you can use in your videos that will still make your video look cinematic and only add to it, rather than having some motion track text in the middle of the sky when it's really obtrusive. It doesn't really add to the cinematic effect to the video. So we're going to be going over my favorite way to actually motion track your videos. And if you want, you're able to follow along with me as well to actually edit the clips and follow along with me step by step, because I'm going to be giving you the free test footage in the description below. If you click that link below, you actually can download the clips, this actual shot of my client, and follow along with me too. I'll even give you the animation iMessage bubble as well, so you can motion track it and also have that. All right, so now we're in Premiere Pro first because we're building this video, and within this video, we're zooming into one clip in particular to really refine it and add a lot of effects to it to make it that much better. So a little context to this video here. If you want to watch it, click the top right up here. You'll see the white card at the top right. Go ahead and check out that video so you get the full context and the full experience of it. In this section of the video, which is the beginning, both my client and his girl are headed to dinner, and they're in different locations. So his girl is texting him, seemingly worried that he's not going to make it on time or he's going to be late, right? So in the video, she's clearly texting, and we wanted to show that she is texting him and he's texting her back and they're having some sort of dialogue. But we also wanted the viewer to be involved in what is being said. So we knew we wanted to show off what was being said, but really how is the biggest issue, because like I said before, like showing a phone in a video and like what is being said through text never really comes off right. It's always cheesy. Either you have to film it, and if you ever film the phone screen, like say in daylight or even some cinematic lighting like this, it's very hard to get the screen brightness right and actually show up with the text so it's legible, and also the background of wherever you are. So now you run into the issue of, are you going to green screen the phone and then motion track the text onto the phone? And even if when you do that, it still looks cheesy, right? So the best way we found is to actually show the chat bubbles on the screen next to my client as he's walking. And how do we make that as immersive as possible is to actually motion track those messages as he's walking to make it feel like it's part of the phone, almost like it came off the phone in like a 3D HUD kind of effect. So how do we do that? Because even in this case scenario with, say, motion tracking with points and or with 3D tracking, it's going to be very hard to isolate a certain contrasted point. So let's jump over to the computer here. As he's walking, to just put the text on the screen and not have it motion tracked, it looks very cheesy. It looks like it's not part of the scene. Like I said earlier, it looks like it's not part of the video, right? It doesn't belong there. It's obtrusive, right? So we wanted to add it and make it integrated to the video. So I knew we had it to motion track it to something in the scene, but really how is the issue? Because there are many different ways to motion track. In this video, we're only going over how to motion track with Mocha, which is one of my favorite plugins with After Effects. If we tried to track it with just a single point, or even with 3D camera tracking, we wouldn't have that good of results. There aren't really that many things that we can kind of lock onto to track that are a very harsh, contrasted point. And also, when my client's walking, he's moving his arms back and forth. He'll eventually, at one point, swipe over his belt buckle, which would be one of the best points to motion track, because that's a constant, harsh, contrasted point to be able to motion track with. So you'll see in this video, my client actually waves his hand over it, so it's not really going to yield the best result. It's going to be a little bit shaky. So the best way to track this video in particular is with Mocha. So let's open up this clip in After Effects first. If you have my keyboard shortcuts, it's Shift-Command-R. That opens up right in After Effects. If you don't have that, right-click on the clip itself, and then click on Replace with After Effects Composition. All right, so we're in After Effects now, and this is the clip, as you can see, just scrubbing. So what we want to do is show the text thread conversation, the iMessage thread, right? And we want to add this bubble right here, this little animation. As you can see, it's typing, and then it pops up like it does on iMessage, and she's asking him, hey, how far away are you, right? So we want to show that she sent that message while he's looking at the phone, almost as if you're looking at the phone with him in the video, right? Really adding to the immersive experience in this video. So we want to show that iMessage on the screen right here, and we want to motion track it to him. So now that we have that idea that we want to motion track it, we have to now pick what we're going to motion track it to, because you can't just pick anything. You can't pick my client's friend over here. You can't pick just the wall. Even when you're picking points on his body, you have to be very, very careful of being aware of the motion that when he moves his hand or when he's typing, you want it to be tracked to an object that it would make sense that is tracked to. It might not make sense right now, but let's actually open up Mocha and we'll dive more into that. So we're going to click on the clip, and if you don't have FX Console, I urge you to download it right now. I'll put it right below this video. If you have it, amazing. Just type into the FX Console bar, which is Control Spacebar. If you have a Mac, just type in Mocha, M-O-C, and then it will pop up right here. If you don't have FX Console, just go to the right side here and you see effects and presets. Just type it in right here, click and drag it onto your video. So now when you have it onto your video, you'll see in the effects control panel, you see Mocha right here. If you don't see this icon right here, Mocha, just click the little arrow. It'll open up this tab. Click on Mocha itself. And if for some reason you switched the preview resolution in this bar right here in the bottom, just make sure it's on auto before you click on Mocha. Now we're opening up Mocha. And just if you get any pop-up windows, just hit register later or next, or don't collect, no, whatever it is. Now that we're on the video here, just a quick little overview. At the bottom is your timeline of the clip that you brought into Mocha. You can kind of click and drag this little blue bar to skim through your footage. On the left side, you have some properties. We'll be going through these tools, only the ones we need to know, because right now it's almost essentially learning a new interface if you've never opened up this window before. I don't want to get too crazy with it. There are only a few tools we need to use for this application, right? Mocha can do a lot of amazing things. We're only using it for a very specific case scenario, which is just tracking the planar. So if you don't know, Mocha is a planar tracker. It tracks planes rather than individual pictures. So especially when tracking in these case scenarios where there's not really a good pixel or contrasted group of pixels to lock onto to track from in After Effects' basic tracker, this is where Mocha really shines. So now we have the dilemma of what do we actually track? Are we tracking his hand? Are we tracking his head? Are we tracking his feet? Are we tracking his chest? Are we tracking the wall? What is the actual thing we're going to be tracking, right? Because with these slight movements in, say, his hand in the beginning part, you can see his hand moves a little bit too quickly in these different directions to actually track the text onto his phone or his hand, right? So we don't want to use his hand because it moves in a little bit more of a jarring direction. We want that text bubble to pop up right about here, so the viewer has enough time to read the message, right? Again, if you want to watch this main video so you get more context, actually what we're doing with the end result is here. Click the card at the top right up here. But again, we want to motion track the text, the actual iMessage bubble, so when it pops up, we have enough time to read it, and it actually is integrated with the scene, with my client who's walking, right? So in this case, we're going to choose his chest to actually track, because out of all the different things we could track, his hand, his head, his feet, his phone, whatever it is, the chest actually is the best in this case scenario, because when we actually do track it, you'll see in the final result that when moving with his chest, it looks a lot more organic than if it were to be with his hand. So we're not going to track his hand, so you have to trust me on that one. So the goal here, again, just to reiterate, is we want Mocha, this external plugin, that comes free with After Effects. We want to use Mocha to get the tracking data and then go back to After Effects, and then we're going to apply it to our actual iMessage. So let's use Mocha right now to grab his chest tracking data so we can actually pair it to our iMessage bubble. So what we're going to do here is go to the top left up here, click this X-spline layer tool right here, and what we're going to do is go over his chest. So we're going to place about, say, 5 or 6 points on his chest. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. And then when you're on the last point and you want to end this selection, just right click, and then you have now created a selection. After we select what we want to track, the left side, the track motion options are what we need to focus on next. So what do we want to track? So we have a few things we can track over here in the track motion options. We can track the transform properties, scale, rotation, skew, and perspective. All of these, you can track all of them with the planar tracker, right? But in this scenario, we don't want to track the scale, the rotation, or the skew. I don't want the iMessage bubble skewing and changing in scale and rotating. I don't want any of that because that'll just be a distraction, right? So we want to turn all of these off. So we just have the transform properties, just the X, Y position. That's all we need here, right? So just the up, down, left, right properties. That's all we need, right? So Now that we've had the selection, we just have this selected over here. We now want to make sure this little gear icon at the top left is checked on the layer that we created. If you do end up getting more advanced and tracking multiple objects with different trackers and different selections, you can rename this. So we can just do name of my client's name in this case, right? So now we know this is Daniel's chest track. We only have this checked here. We have nothing else as far as their scale, rotation, etc., etc. So with all that being said, let's actually track it. So there are two options here. We could track backwards or we could track forwards. So what we're gonna do first is track backwards as far as we need to get the tracking data for, and then we're gonna track forwards to get the rest of it. So let's click the track backwards button and let it do its magic. Now we're gonna be watching it as it's tracked to make sure it doesn't fall off or get the wrong object while it's tracking. And this might take some time if you have an older computer. And that looks pretty good. Let's play it back here. And it looks like it did a pretty good job as far as tracking onto his chest, that plane. Okay, so let's go now to where we initially started, and now we're going to track forwards. So click the button right here, track forwards. And again, we're going to watch it as it's tracking just to make sure it's staying on where we want it to stay. And we'll stop it there. So just looking back at this, it looks amazing. It looks great. Like almost like nothing needs to be changed right here. We can literally go and proceed with this right here with this tracking data. If you guys know anything about After Effects, if you tried to track before, like this scene right here tracking with points or pixels would have been an absolute nightmare. Even with the 3D tracker, absolute nightmare, right? With the planar tracker, you can actually track the plane, not just one group of pixels or a pixel, right? The plane. Which makes it an absolute game changer for situations like this where you need to track a little bit more of a complicated or advanced subject. So this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. We're done with Mocha. This is as far as you need to go. It is somewhat intimidating at first because not many people use Mocha in the first place. So that's literally as much as you need to do in Mocha. That's it. So what we're going to do here is Command S. We're just going to save it. That's it. And then X out of Mocha. And now we're back in After Effects. So we have the tracking data. It's lying in here still in the effect. We still have to do a few more things to actually apply it, but we're done with Mocha. Now we're back in After Effects. What we're gonna do here is under the layer, we're gonna right click and hit New and then Null Object. If you don't know what a null object is essentially just a placeholder. It's nothing, right? It's just, it holds data. So what we're gonna do is go back to the initial clip. We're gonna click on tracking data and move this and open this little tab up here. You want to make sure you're at the beginning of the clip before you apply that export, because it will apply the export starting at whatever position your playhead is at. Very, very important. This drove me nuts for so long. Make sure it's at the beginning of the timeline. So we're going to hit create tracking data, and it's going to pop up a window and just confirm that you want to take the tracking data from Mocha from the selection that you made, right? And if you named it, you would see the name right here. Just make sure the cog wheel is checked and hit OK. So boom. Now we pulled that tracking data into After Effects. We have all the data here. Now there's a few options as far as the export options. You can do corner pin support motion blur, and you can also do transform. I like to do transform. And then on layer export to, let's just rename this null object so we can keep track of it. If you click on it, hit enter, and you can now rename it. And again, let's just type in my client's name. So now we know we're going to paste this tracking data that we got from Mocha onto the null object that is called Daniel. And again, the null object is just a placeholder. It's literally nothing other than just to hold data. That's it. So click on the clip. We're going here now at the layer export to, click on this window here and select the null object. Make sure it's at the first frame of the clip and then apply export. And now if we play it back, if we zoom in on my client, you see this red square right here, which is the null object. And you can see the trail that has been created from the tracking data in Mocha. Right, so pretty cool. So let's play that back just to see what it did. So if we skim through it, you'll see that that red square is locked onto his chest very, very well, which is going to be a great source to pull from when we're actually putting on our iMessage bubble. Okay, so now that we have the tracking data, let's actually grab the iMessage bubble, which again, you have in that download. If you haven't downloaded by now, I urge you to follow along with me. Go in the link below, download the footage, download the clips, and also the animation iMessage bubble. So in this bubble right here, we have first is a typing bubble, and then it actually pops up with the real message. What we're going to do here is select all three of these layers, right click, and then just pre-compose, and then move all attributes into new composition. That just puts it in one very simple composition. We're going to copy this. We're going to go back to this composition, which is the video we just tracked, and we're going to paste it here. So now, as you can see, it starts to play the animation by doing the type bubbles, and then eventually pops up the actual message, right? And you can see it's not motion tracked at all, right? So what we have to do is actually link it to the null that we created that has the tracking data on it. let's first line up the animation to the right exact moment, because we want the viewer to see the message right as he's about to look at his phone. So you're able to read the 4 to 5, 6 word sentence and also experience this clip and follow along. I don't want it to be shown too quickly so you can't read the full sentence and you have to go back to read it, or you just missed it and you're not really following along, right? I want you to be able to read that full sentence and seemingly at the exact same time he's reading it. So this message here should be shown right when he looks at his phone. So let's move this little bit back as far as the animation. A little bit more. Right about there is good. Right, maybe a little bit farther. So right about there, right? So it pops up right as he's looking at his phone, and you can see him typing away, responding to her, right? So the animation starts here as far as the typing, pulls his phone out. Right as he looks at his phone, the message pops up, you can read it, and then it cuts back to her in the car playing with the dog. So before we actually motion track it, let's just move the position so it's a little bit farther away from him, not too far, maybe just covering him slightly. Now that we've found a good position for the actual text bubble, and we already have the track data, what we want to do here, I'm just gonna rename this comp as well. Just call it a text message, right? We have the text message layer, the Daniel layer, which is the null object with the tracking data, and then the original clip. So let's go to the text message animation. We're gonna go over here under parent and link, click on this little pick whip right here, click and drag on it, and then we're gonna hover over Daniel. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna parent the track data to this animation. So now this bubble, this animation is gonna move with that tracking data as if they're one, right? As if they're parented together. So let's play that back and see what it looks like. As you can see, it's moving with it very, very smoothly. Let's now play that back at full resolution. Perfect. So it pops up just when he sees his phone, so you have enough time to read it before we cut to the next clip and actually show her back in the car before he responds to her. So this is perfect. So to go one more level into the integration process, whenever you're adding text to videos, especially this kind of text where it's really doesn't belong here, right? Eventually we're going to be adding more effects over this clip. Other than the grading, we're going to be adding some grain and also overlays to really make this whole video, this whole experience cinematic and cohesive. But another thing we can do to this actual layer, this actual video, is add a drop shadow to it. Because if this actually was there in real life, it would have shadows, it would have dimension to it through the light. So let's add some dimension to it. The best way to do that is actually to add a drop shadow. So let's click on our layer, make sure it's on the text message layer. Let's hit the control spacebar, which pulls up the effects console, or go in the effects panel on the right side here, type in drop shadow. And you see if you just type in drop, it's the first one. Click on it and you can see it added a little bit to it, just a tad. We actually want more. So let's increase the opacity to about 80%, and then let's do these two drop-down windows. Let's do the distance just a little bit farther out, not too far. And we can see the 1 minute, it's getting a little bit too far away here, but let's increase that softness to it. Just a little bit farther away. Let's just mess with the distance a little bit too, just to find that good balancing point. When you're doing these tasteful kind of effects, you want to go too far and then too little, just to see where that perfect balance is, where it's not too much, but it's also not too little, so you can't even notice it. So right about here, we're at what, 11.6 for distance, and then about 17 for softness. And then same with the opacity. Let's try to see what it looks like all the way up. A little bit too harsh, and then bring it back down. So right where it was, about 80%, is pretty good. So just with that very simple drop shadow effect, we could get more advanced with multiple drop shadows and also some lighting effects as well. We don't need to go that far, but let's just see what it looks like before and after without the drop shadow. It looks pretty good, right? It's pretty integrated. And let's actually add that drop shadow to it, right? It looks a lot better as far as the dimension, and that it's actually really there, and there's some shadows casted on it, which really sell the effect. Another thing we could do here to really sell this effect just a little bit more, we actually can mess with the blending mode. Right, if you don't know blending modes, I'm not going to explain it right now as a whole separate video, but we can try a few. Usually overlay, soft light, hard light, light and screen are the top 5 to use for these blending modes. So in this case, when it's a white object or white text, you're going to use lighten and screen. So lighten still retains some of the blacks in the text. As you can see, soft light just takes away all the white. So we'll do lighten. So here it doesn't work out to actually add an overlay. What we're going to do instead is just reduce the opacity just a little bit, right? Because I want some transparency to be able to see behind this text message bubble. So again, it sells the effect more that it's actually there. You can see behind it, you can see through it. So what we're gonna do is click on the text message layer and hit T. That's the shortcut to open up the opacity layer right here. And we're gonna click on the 100% and hold Command, because that's a very precise way to scroll. But click and drag. We're gonna be able to fade the effect just a little bit, so it's a little bit see-through. And again, these things are very, very subtle. The 1, 2, 3%ers that really add to the video. But at a certain point, once you get the macro video done, the macro track done, it is these subtle little things that really sell the effect and make it that much more cinematic. So we're now at the opacity about 87% here with the normal blending mode. Looks great. Let's back up a little bit. And that looks perfect. As you can see the light behind it right here. Through it, because it's transparent, but you also can read it. So just another good way to sell the effect, to actually make it seem like it's part of the scene. Now this may seem like a lot of steps, and especially if you weren't following along with me with the actual footage that I gave you, it may seem like very complicated, but if you break it down, it's really, really simple. So let's actually go back to Premiere Pro with the overlays, with the grain, and see how it looks. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video on tracking with Mocha. Mocha, again, is one of my favorite plugins that comes free with After Effects, which is an amazing way to track the planes in your videos. So you don't have to deal with the little tiny pixels and the motion tracker being 1 pixel off and it's jagged and you gotta fix it. It's a whole nightmare, right? Mocha has saved me in so many situations where I could never ever get a track on something because of the actual pixels in the video. And in those case scenarios, it has done an amazing job, as you just saw just now. So I hope you followed along. I hope you actually downloaded that test footage and followed along with me. And again, if you actually want to see this clip in action, in practical use in one of my videos, click this button right here to see the full video. Because again, like I said in the beginning, it's always fun to learn new tactics, new effects. You can put the text in the sky, you can put the image on the phone screen, you can add this crazy glow or whatever effect it is. But at the end of the day, the whole goal of learning all these skills in these effects is to make your videos better, right? Don't never forget the main goal when you're trying to become a filmmaker and actually produce these high quality videos, because the whole goal is adding these tools, these effects, these things you can do within your edits to not only build your brand, become a better filmmaker, but also dial in your style. So if you guys liked this tutorial on Mocha and tracking with Mocha in a practical use setting, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button. Drop a comment as well. Let me know how you did following along with me and if you were able to get the exact same result as me, and also what kind of videos you want to see in the future. So I hope you enjoyed. Talk to you soon. Peace.